On this video, I'm going to talk to you about just get rich first. Three things that are keeping you broke that you must stop doing today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, but today. And see what you don't know. Most people don't realize is getting rich isn't about how hard you work. I mean, hard work is important because it makes you a better person. Like anything that you do that's hard makes you better, and it makes the thing that's hard today easier tomorrow. But hard work is not the key to success. It's the key to exhaustion, and you don't want to work hard for hard work's sake. It's about doing right things in the right order in order to get rich. Now, one of the things that I see people doing is they get things out of order. And the first thing you got to do is you have to postpone the performance. So you have to stop looking rich before you are rich. One of the biggest things that keeps people broke is attempting to impress people with stuff. It literally doesn't make any sense. Now I'm going to draw something on the board, but before I do, I'm going to make an assertion. And the assertion that I'm going to make is going to be probably offensive to some. It's not my intention to offend, but if it offends, that's what it does. Only until it helps you. If you just at least entertain the possibility that it might be correct. And that is that. We live in an era where it's easier to create wealth than it's ever been in human history, but it feels so hard. Why does it feel hard? The reason it feels so hard is because the more technology advances, the less time we have to tool up for the new advance. So we find ourselves stuck like Chuck in a pickup truck, beautifully educated to earn a living in a world that no longer exists. And so many of the things that you've been preparing yourself for your whole life, I don't know another way to say it. They just don't matter. They don't matter anymore. It's amazing. I mean, we have a business that does, 10, 15, $18 million a year, depending on the year. It's doing okay. But if I keep doing what I've been doing to make 10, 15, 18 million a year, it'll eventually turn into 2 or 3 million a year. And then it might turn into 900,000 a year. And then it'll turn into 300,000 a year. If I think I can just keep doing what I've always done just because it's always worked. I have to change with the times. And the problem that many people have is they don't feel like they have enough time to change with the times. Because there was a time when it was true that the abundance of wealth belonged to the specialists who knew the most about one thing. But we live in an era where the wealth belongs more to the generalists who can learn the most new things the fastest. And so you got to be like, you got to be willing to learn new things really, really fast. And you got to train your brain to learn new things really, really fast. And then you got to take action really, really fast. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind and you're going to get started on day 975 when the trend has already moved into a totally different place. So pause before you purchase. Now, I want you, everybody watching me out there in the YouTube sphere, everybody in this room, I want you to look at yourself and see how you prioritize the money that you make and how you prioritize the money that you spend. See, I became aware of what I'm about to say in 1999, and that's when my whole life changed. 1999 was a very pivotal year for me. It was my first six-figure year in my life after being an entrepreneur for 14 years. 1999 was my first six-figure year, and we didn't have we had the internet, but it wasn't the internet. You know what I'm saying? It was bulletin boards and Prodigy and CompuServe, right? And there was no YouTube, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no such thing as an influencer, there was no Amazon. Imagine that. AI. No, there was no, okay? So I learned back then that making money, like you don't get rich because you make more money. Most people think if I could just make more money, I'd be rich. No, if you'd make more money, you'd just be broke at a higher level unless you change how you think about money. What makes you rich is your perception about the purpose of money. That's what makes you rich, poor, or middle class. Your perception about the purpose of money. And so like I asked myself, what was my perception? And when I was poor, my perception was, and I know it's in my Trash Man to Cash book, and I know I draw it a lot, but one of the things I notice about people who really do well at anything in life, they master the fundamentals. Like people want to get good at all of the extra stuff. People want to be a good guitar player, and they don't even even like know chord progressions in the basic pentatonic scale, right? Or the basic like chromatic scale. You might like do the basics. Like they don't use a metronome when they practice. And so they can play anything, but their timing is always off, right? The fundamentals make all the difference. And so when we look at the difference between rich people, poor people, middle class people, this is how I think about it. And I don't know, I think how I think about it is at least beneficial to me. It might be beneficial to you if you start thinking about it this way. This is your financial house. That's the door. Okay, that's the door. These are the windows in your financial house. This is your income window. Most people get their income from their job. Now, people think whether they're rich or poor is determined by this. It's not at all. I believe that I could get a minimum wage job, and utilizing my perception of the purpose of money at a minimum wage job, I could get rich. Why? Because poor people think the primary, by the way, this is the income window. This is the outgo window. So poor people, they believe that this is poor. They believe that the primary purpose of money is to pay bills. That's the primary purpose. Secondary purpose of money is to look rich. And what happens is all of the money comes into the income window, goes out through the outgo. And you can tell if somebody's poor if you just ask them how they like your job. How do you like your job? If they say, well, I got to pay the bills. I see. We don't even understand how our language betrays our thoughts. Well, I got to pay the bills. When somebody says, I got to pay the bills, that tells me that you think the primary purpose of money is to pay bills. And the primary purpose of having a job is to make enough money to pay the bills. So they think they're poor because their job doesn't pay them enough. But they're really poor because they think of money as a tool for paying bills. They say, well, money is a tool for paying bills. It is, but that's only one of the purposes for money. And I submit to you that thinking that's the primary purpose will keep you broke as a joke and ready to choke for the rest of your life. So what about middle class people? Well, middle class people, they don't just pay their bills, they pay their bills on time. And they think, I'm going to do middle class. And they think the primary purpose of money is to establish good credit so they can buy things they can't afford. Okay? And then so it comes down to their wealth reducing liabilities window and goes out the outgo form of debt. And so they're borrowing money to buy things they can't afford, to look like they have something they don't have, to impress people they don't know, and some of them they don't like. And the people they're attempting to impress don't even care. And this is why middle class people stay middle class, because they think the primary purpose of money is to establish good credit so they can live the life of their dreams. Rich people focus on this window. I literally, when I started focusing on this window, my life changed. I didn't do anything. I didn't have a goal vision board. I didn't have goals that were written down that I read out loud 7 times a day. I just said, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those. I'm not saying there's something wrong with those things. I'm just saying I didn't do those things. The one thing that I did that changed my life forever in 1999 was I started focusing on my income producing assets. And I sat down and I asked myself, what income producing assets do I have? I needed to focus more of my intention and more of my attention on my income producing assets. I had 2. I had my tape ministry because I was a traveling evangelist. And so I would sell my preaching tapes for $5, right? When I go to churches and speak, they could buy. So church gave me an offering, people bought tapes, but I'd always have a lot of tapes. And then I'd make tape series. And if it had 4 tapes in it, I'd sell it for $20. If it had 8 tapes, I'd sell it for $40, right? And so that's not taking, I had to buy the tapes. I had to buy the machines. A lot of work went into that, but I had that, and I had my network marketing business. Those were my 2 assets that I had. So I started really hyper focusing on taking some of my money and putting it over here. Some of my money, putting it down here because I was middle class. And then some of my money just going out to pay bills. But I started building assets. So I had an asset. Then I had another asset. Then eventually I had another asset. And eventually I had another asset. And eventually I had another asset. Now, when you first start putting money into your income producing assets window, like you start putting money in your income producing asset window, when you first start doing it, you know what happens? Nothing happens. That income producing asset window just sits there and looks at you like, now what, bro? Right? Nothing happens. And because the powers that be, the principalities and powers and rulers of darkness in this world, they know how addicted to a paycheck we are. And so it is very hard in America, maybe not in other countries, but at least in America, it's very hard for Americans to work on anything for a very long period of time that doesn't give them the immediate gratification of a paycheck. You write a book. Let's say it takes you 6 months to write the book. Takes you another 3 months to get it like edited, designed, laid out, illustrated, blah, blah, blah. So now you got 9 months into the book. You worked on this book for 9 months. This made you no money, but you had to pay editors and you had to pay graphic designers and you had to, it's like, but what if it, and then you got this little voice in your head. What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? Right? And it's like heckle and jackal in your mind, just like, right? And so then what happens is you stop putting money into your income producing asset window. And then you start taking money out of your income producing asset window to do these things. And you wonder why you stay broke. Is what I'm saying making some sense? Okay. But what happened for me was I just kept doing this and this window kept getting bigger. And guess what happened? Eventually, this window started putting money back into my income window. I'm like, and then it put more money into my income window. And then it put more. And then I got to the place where my income producing assets took care of all the bills and my income producing asset paid off all my debt. So eventually, if this window gets to the place where it's the largest window in your house, it can literally pay you, pay off your debt and pay all your bills. I'm like, this diagram that I just drew for you changed my life. So I want you to think about this in light of what I'm talking about right now. Okay. Now, I know some of you already, but I've already seen that before, right? Okay, that's great that you've seen it. For those of you in the YouTube sphere, for those of you in the room, how many of you are doing it though? How many of you are actively focused on your income producing asset? When I think about my book, From the Trash Man to the Cash Man, which I wrote in 2006, 20 years ago. Now, when I first wrote the book, it didn't make me no money. Didn't make me no money at all. Nothing. Big, fat, juicy goose egg. But now, 20 years later, it's still making me money. That book made me $81,000 in the last year for work I did 20 years ago. Now, I never had a job where I made $81,000 working for it. I wrote this book one time. How many times? One. How many? And 20 years later, it's paying me $81,000 a year. Now, I might be crazy, but I ain't stupid. So guess what I did? I wrote another book. I wrote Boss Moves 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Now, how many of y'all would like to be getting paid 5 years from now on work you do today? That's right. Well, the only work that'll pay you 5 years from now is the work you do on building assets for your income producing asset window. Now, the Boss Moves book, that book funnel has made me $180,000 in the last year. I don't run ads to the books. I don't run any. No, you none. I don't run ads to the books. I almost never mention them. Hey, go buy my book. And like on a video, like, hey, subscribe to my channel and buy my book. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but I'm not doing it. But people are finding my content online. They like it. They research. They're like, I wonder what else he has. I wonder what else he's got a book. I buy a book. Oh, I got another book. Okay, $261,000. Now here's what $261,000 does. A lot of good. Every extra $261,000 helps. I always say, but guess what? Those are only two of my assets. And they're two like they're not even core product assets. I mean, they kind of are, but like they're less, both of them are less than $40. I've got assets that are $299. I got assets that are $500, $700. I got assets that are $5,000, $27,000, $55,000, $375,000, $1 million assets that I sell. And so I'm not saying that to brag or make you think I'm all that. I'm just a dude doing the thing. But I'm doing the thing. You think it's because he's the dude. No, it's because he's doing the thing. Okay, so the first thing you got to stop doing is you got to stop trying to look rich before you get rich. Getting rich is not about looking rich. Stop looking rich before you get rich. Poverty is a psychology before it's a situation. And this is this psychology right here. Staying in that, I like principles because principles are like guardrails. They're like seatbelts. They're like airbags. They protect you from coming catastrophe and they always work. Okay, so performing to look wealthy postpones prosperity permanently. You're making less than, I don't even know what average income is. So I don't know because I'm kind of in my own bubble. But let's say the average income is $120,000. Let's say you're making less than $120,000. shoes. It does not make sense for you to have Louis Vuitton shoes. Stupid. That's right. That's right. I'm not saying you're stupid. That's not a good idea. That's money stupid. You don't you're making less than $120,000 a year. You don't need a used Mercedes because it costs more to own a Mercedes than it does to buy one, or a BMW or a Rolls Royce or a Lamborghini. Let all that stuff go. Who cares what somebody thinks? I have nice cars. I have nice high-end cars, but my assets pay for them. I don't pay for them. My assets pay for my life. My assets pay.